Well, welcome back. Today's session, we will be talking about employee engagement and culture, building morale that drives performance. But before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to reintroduce someone who brings real earned perspective to this topic. I'm joined today by Bob Bennett, a proven entrepreneur and CEO who has founded, scaled, and successfully exited multiple businesses throughout his career. Bob isn't speaking about engagement and culture from theory. He's actually lived it. He's built organizations, led teams through growth, navigated challenges, and understands firsthand what it takes to create environments where people perform, where they stay, and where they thrive. What makes his perspective especially valuable is that he's seen the direct connection between leadership, culture, and business outcomes, not as concepts, but more as decisions that impact performance every single day. And that's exactly the lens we want to bring into today's conversation. So, Bob, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Andreina. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So Bob, let's dive right in. Employee engagement is often seen as a nice to have, but not always as a business priority. From your experience, how does engagement actually impact performance, retention, and overall business results?
It's a great question. Well, I think we need to think about employee engagement not as a nice to have. It really is a critical business performance lever. And if you aren't using that lever to drive your business, you're never going to reach the kind of heights that you can if you do. It's not nice to have. I think it's interesting that entrepreneurs think of our businesses in terms of revenue, profitability, growth, buildings, equipment, offices, leased space, logos, phone numbers, reputation, customer retention, customer satisfaction. All those things are important, but we don't, and that's how we think about our business is in those terms. What we don't naturally think about is about our business in their most basic form as a group of people who hopefully are focused on a singular mission to satisfy our customers' needs and demands so that they continue to pay us and grow in how much they pay us over time and help to spread the word and grow the customer base to others through referrals. Again, all of those things that we think about are all put in place by the people that we have. Our logos, our reputation, our customer satisfaction, it all relies on our employee satisfaction, employee retention, and how motivated and culturally aligned our employees are. That is really the key. Organizations are just groups of people. They're not a company name. They're not a logo. And our reputation, goes up or down as our people go up or down. So employees are our company. And the other stuff really doesn't matter as much as how our people are imposing themselves every day to make us a better company. So it stands to reason that employee engagement is truly critical, right? If you have mildly engaged employees, you have mildly engaged customers. I mean, employees that are not that engaged are just not going to be that great with the customers, right? So customer engagement will drive customer retention and growth. Employee engagement will drive customer engagement. As a simple example, most of us need input from our customers on what we can do better, what we can do that's an enhancement. How can we make better business for them? How can we make their lives easier with enhancements or with new products or new services? So think of two scenarios where both companies have 10 people. You've got one that has maybe 4 out of 10 that are truly engaged with the company. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of teamwork with 4 of the 10 people. And they all work, but everybody is it's only 10 people in the company, and both of these companies have 10 people. The other is a company where all 10 of the employees are engaged with each other and the business and with customers. And which of those two companies is most likely to uncover new opportunities to enhance and expand the business? The answer is obvious. It's the one that has everybody engaged with each other and with the business and with the customers. So just to summarize it, employee engagement drives customer engagement. Customer engagement drives customer growth. Customer growth drives success. Yours, the customers, and all your employees. So making sure that employees are engaged is step one and critically important. Employee engagement is a critical business lever that separates the great companies from the average, and it's not difficult to engage with employees. Most are eager for engagement. It's just challenging for us to get out of the mindset that we need to be telling employees what to do instead of asking employees what they think we should be doing.
I love that. That's spot on, Bob. At the end, engagement affects productivity, it affects retention, it affects collaboration, and disengagement creates hidden costs. We need to really be mindful of that because engagement is not a perk, it's a performance multiplier. So, Bob, when we talk about morale and culture, many leaders think about perks or benefits. In your experience, what are the real drivers of strong morale inside an organization?
There's a lot of different styles of management that do create positive morale in environments. Generally speaking, strong positive morale stems from true employee engagement. Engagement is a two-way conversation, not the boss telling everyone what they need to do. Engagement starts with leaders that acknowledge that they don't have all the answers and that they don't have all the answers, and acknowledging that the answers are probably better coming from those that actually are in the front lines, that talk with the customers more than the boss does. So the people that are the closest to the customer, if you can ask them for input into decision making and direction, you're going to get much better results. You're going to get better decisions. It's going to create an environment where people feel like they have ownership because they're actually participating, not just in their little job that they have, not necessarily little, but in their job, that in the specifics of their job, they're actually helping to participate in the overall well-being and helping to make an impact in the overall company through their input. So the challenge for many leaders is that they think that they need to set the direction, make the decisions, and instruct employees on what to do. In fact, employees generally know what to do and are happy to share where they think the company could be doing things more efficiently and effectively. Many employees are afraid to offer their opinions, however, because strong leaders can sometimes feel like they're closed off to other ideas and outside counsel. Or it could be the employee lacks confidence. This is new to them. They're like, oh, I don't know. They're asking me for an opinion? What? That's not my job. My job is to execute what they're asking me to do. Well, the way you build strong leaders and you build strong people in your organization is by giving them the podium every once in a while to actually tell us what they think we should be doing. And this is where the strong leader needs to solicit input from those around her or him to create an engaged environment where we show mutual respect and that it is a safe place to raise questions and offer opinions. If an employee voices an idea and the boss or someone else says, that's a terrible idea, or that won't work, we may never get another idea from that person. And that person's probably not feeling good about it, and they're probably on their way out. The company's value system must encourage out-of-the-box thinking and input from all employees to be the best it can be. And respect is critical, and not judging ideas, particularly in a public forum, is really important. So you've got to build some operating guidelines, a value system for your company around making it open and candid and transparent and inclusive so that everybody feels like they can actually participate and provide ideas that they think are good ideas. And you need to not be judging it and say, oh, we've tried that before, that doesn't work. That's basically like saying, shut up. You're not going to do that to an employee, hopefully, right? So a sample set of operating guidelines, we can talk about that another time, perhaps, I use the word NOISE, NOISERC, NOISE RC, no sidelines, one field of play, we're all on it. Don't get next to somebody. If you don't think that they're getting it done the way that they could be, show them how to get it done. Don't go to their manager or your manager to go to their manager and start to play management ping pong and getting 4 people involved when you could just get right next to the person and say, I think you could be doing something differently that's going to help us all be more effective. No sidelines. Open, candid dialogue is the O. Integrity is the I. You'll always tell the truth 100%. Don't set expectations that you're not going to be able to fulfill, because that's not the integrity. That's not integrity. That's being deceitful. A sense of urgency is the S. E is for excellence. We strive for excellence in everything we do, particularly in written and oral communications with each other and with customers. The R is respect. We need to respect everybody. Everybody has different perspectives. They might say things differently. They might sound differently than we do. But a diverse workforce and diverse opinions create better, more thoughtful perspectives on what's really going on in the world, because they represent the world. We have perspectives that represent the world better than just my perspectives, which are just one person's perspectives. So respecting all of those perspectives is critically important. And the C is charity. Give back. The more you give, the more you get ultimately in life. So be charitable. So let's face it, we're all in jobs that are completely unique. I would contend that there are no 2 jobs that are the same, even though they might have the same job description. Just the way that it is. But we shouldn't be kidding ourselves that we are so good at what we do that we don't need any outside guidance or input or constructive feedback. Management that asks employees for constructive feedback on a regular basis, I would say at least yearly through some kind of an anonymous survey, are creating engagement and showing that they have genuine humility, the courage to ask, what could I be doing better? That's a very important question. Anyway, anonymous surveys gives you feedback. The results of an anonymous survey, if you haven't done it, will be eye-opening. They may sting a little, but understand that the feedback you are receiving is already being discussed by the employees when you're not there. So you might as well hear it so that you know where you have some opportunities for improvement and who doesn't want to improve. Think about a professional athlete that's not getting feedback on how they're performing, on how they're going about their daily activities. I mean, that person's not going to be very successful if they're not getting feedback from the coaches and from other players that can help them. Same thing for all of us. We need constructive feedback, and you have to have the courage to ask for it.
I think that we all like a good pizza on a Friday, but I think it's important from us to shift our mentality from perks to systems, leadership, and clarity. Some of the themes that you'll find are leadership behavior, clarity of expectations, recognition and growth, trust and communication. Because morale is built through daily experiences, not just isolated initiatives. So I appreciate that. Bob, so how much of employee engagement and culture is actually driven by leadership? And what are the most common gaps you see in managers when it comes to maintaining engagement?
So it's a good question. I mean, I think that first of all, as I said a little bit earlier, it's the rare manager who wants to hear how they can improve. We're just not geared for asking, what are we doing wrong? Right? We want to do things right, but we're not asking people, what can we do better? You need to. So it's a blocker for us, right? And when you do this anonymous survey, and it needs to be anonymous or you're not going to get the truth. The anonymous survey will provide you with feedback on areas that you may be able to improve. And maybe some of those areas, maybe they're off base and they aren't relevant, but you want to hear them anyway just to see what other people's perspectives are. To me, not asking for constructive feedback is counterintuitive to the notion of personal growth. I mentioned the athlete. If the athlete is not asking how I can be better, they're not going to get as much better as they should, right? It's the same thing. If we ask for help, most people professionals consider the word help to be the most important word in business. You ask for help, you ask for feedback, and it takes courage because you're going to get constructive criticism. It's the good manager that's brave enough to ask for constructive feedback anonymously, and you will win as a result of it.
I love that. I think that managers are the primary drivers of engagement. And at the end of the day, weak leadership equals disengagement. Even if you have good policies, procedures, process flows. At Arka, one of our values is we value retention and we value culture. We also value the performance and accountability, because at the end of the day, it is up to us, the founders, the managers, the client service delivery folks, to be able to maintain that inverted pyramid. Definitely, it's very important. What are the risks for organizations that don't actively manage engagement and morale?
High churn, high employee churn. High employee churn results in high customer churn. You're going to not be able to retain your great employees because they're not engaged. They're not providing you. You seem to be closed off to. You will appear to be closed off to constructive feedback. Engagement is two-way dialogue. If you're just telling people what to do, that's one way. You need to be you might be telling them a way that they used to do something that really doesn't work as well as the way that they currently do it. And, but if you're not open to listening to how it's actually done now, you're going to lose respect. And ultimately, you probably lose those critical employees, which is going to reduce your client count, reduce your revenue, and ultimately start a downward spiral. And I really think that, especially today, engaged employees. I know companies that ask how their employees are doing every quarter through anonymous surveys. There are things called Pulse out there that ask every month how are the employees doing, just to get a finger on the pulse of how they're feeling from an employee satisfaction standpoint. I think that's too much personally, but I do think that at least annually, and annually with an open field that says, how can we do things better in the company, provides an opportunity for long-winded, perhaps, feedback, but constructive feedback based in usually based in facts that you can use to affect change and become better as a company. And the mere fact that you're willing to ask for constructive feedback from your employee base shows a genuine humility, which Jim Collins says separates the good leader from the great leader. The ability to show that, to admit that I don't have all the answers. I want answers. I want to learn. I want to grow, and you can help me grow. And I'm here to help you grow because I remove barriers for you in your quest to serve the customer as best you can. So I just think that, this is all about two-way dialogue. It's not about slaps on the back. It's, yes, having team building exercises when you have an employee, let's say a remote employee base, and you want to try to get everybody in the company, let's say on a Friday, which is a hard day to get everybody in the company on remote businesses in the office. I used to bring bagels in with cream cheese, and we just kind of hung out for the first, 45 minutes of the day, eating bagels, drinking coffee, and just shooting the breeze. There were very few people that missed Fridays after we got that going for a few weeks. And every Friday, we just bring in bagels and bam, the room was full. So that's not necessarily anybody's goal. I'm simply saying that there's simple things, and being open and just collaborative and just having discussions as a real person with genuine humility creates an environment where morale will absolutely boost over time.
Yes, there's definitely a high cost to this engagement. I often tell executives that they're too busy looking at their P&L, yet they don't look and focus on what's probably the most expensive line item, which is your people, your payroll. And disengagement leads to increased turnover, lower productivity, poor collaboration, cultural misalignment, all that ultimately bleeds the organization in so many ways, because this engagement doesn't always show up immediately, but it impacts performance over time. If we can measure who's using the credit card, who's swiping their credit card away, and that number, it's easy to see. So an executive, a manager can quickly fix those issues. But when it comes to people, it's a little more sensitive and more time consuming. And ultimately, if folks are disengaged, more expensive. So Bob, as always, can you please give us some advice? Give advice for CEOs and founders. For the leaders joining us today, what are the first thing they should evaluate if they want to strengthen engagement and build a stronger culture in their organization?
Right. I think that if you don't do a annual survey, anonymous annual survey of employee satisfaction, you should do it. That's the first step. It doesn't have to be in October. It could be in April. It could be in January. It doesn't matter when it is, but you need to do that at least annually to get honest feedback on where we think we can do better. It doesn't matter if you're already doing well, by the way. This will only create more employee engagement, which drives more customer engagement. So, or you can even suggest if you are getting input from customers on what we could do, please share it, right? So create subgroups that are maybe cross-functional. You have somebody from, marketing with sales, with product or engineering, whatever. But have people get together and discuss how we can improve the business. You don't even need to be there. You say, listen, go ahead, pull a group together and tell us how. A story, if you ever have a chance to look up this guy named Ralph Stayer, Stayer, who was inherited a sausage company in Wisconsin from his father. And Ralph Stayer, and it was a little tiny sausage company, less than $10 million in annual revenue. The machine broke. People would run into his office and say, hey, the machine's broken. And he would have to figure out how to fix the machine, call the vendors, call the people. And, this would happen over and over again. Something else happens. They call him and said, hey, the conveyor broke. Oh, the shipment didn't come from from the pork, the butcher for the pork. We can't make sausages today. So he'd get on the phone. Ultimately, he was working 12, 14 hours a day. Company was just limping along, not really growing, just surviving. He's like do it all, fix it all CEO of this company that had maybe 20 people. And one day somebody came in and said, hey, the machine broke. And he said, I'm leaving. You pull a team together and figure out how to fix the machine. And he left. And it took a day, but the team got together and said, what do we do? I don't know. Well, there's a stamp on the thing that says who makes it. Let's call them. And, they figured it out. It took maybe longer than it would have if Ralph had done it. But then he said, wow, they fixed it. They did it. And look at them. They're like kind of proud of themselves. Similar problem happened. The pork didn't show up the next day. He said, figure it out. You guys do it. I'm leaving. And he left again. And they figured it out and they got the delivery and they got them on a schedule that's make it so that they weren't going to miss it again. They insisted on advance notice and inventory. So they started setting up systems. Anyway, long story short, he kept doing that and the employee base kept getting better, better. The name of that little sausage company in Wisconsin is called Johnsonville Sausage. Next time you're in the grocery store, look in the meat area and look at Johnsonville Sausage, which is an enormous nationwide, billion-dollar company. And that is the truth. That is how it all happened because he had the courage to say, and he was just fed up. He was at the end of his rope doing everything. He said, you figure it out. What happened was he built all these great, strong managers. So start with a survey, get constructive feedback, and don't give the answers when an employee asks you for an answer. Say, what would you do? And I don't need an answer right now if you don't have one. Go talk with a few other people and come back and tell me what you want to do.
It's an amazing story, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely, it's inspired me to be able to. I'm going back to my employees and telling them, what would you do? That's what I'm doing next. Thank you for that. And it's also important for CEOs and founders looking at this today that you evaluate your employee experience consistency and also manager effectiveness, the retention patterns, alignment between values and behaviors that speaks louder than words, growth and development opportunity. What we've discussed today reinforces that engagement and culture are not just abstract concepts. They're the result of how organizations design their people system and how leaders show up every single day. In our experience, engagement and morale are directly connected to four key areas, which is talent and retention. Are we attracting and keeping the right people? Retention, morale, and culture. Are employees engaged and aligned? Performance and accountability. Do employees have clarity and direction? Compliance and organizational structure. Are expectations and practices consistent? When these areas are aligned, organizations create an environment where people can perform, where they can grow and ultimately stay. And when they're not, we often see the opposite: disengagement, turnover, and inconsistent performance. That's why one of the most valuable things leadership teams can do is to take a structured look at how these elements are working together and where there are opportunities to strengthen them. Because unlimited, strong culture and engagement are not accidental, they are intentional built. And that's what we need to do as executives, as founders, to be able to build this culture very intentionally. So thank you, Bob, once again for joining us today. It's been great to having you and having this real knowledge and examples and
But
actual things that we can take and go improve right away.
you're very kind, Andrea. Let me ask this question because I frequently have found that the anonymous surveys should be done from somebody external. Do you know any companies that can do these employee surveys for companies anonymously and help to distill the results?
And I sure do. At Arka HR, we have this program that we call the HR Gap Assessment. And with that assessment, we are really going in to identify gaps between the people, the processes, and the culture. And when there's a lot of trust when an outside entity comes in and does these assessments, because let's say, especially for perhaps even smaller teams, they're always afraid that they're going to identify who's the person filling out the form. But when you do bring it to someone else, a different entity from outside of the organization, there's a true impact in how the employees respond and what they feel like. They feel like there is reinforcement here to really make some meaningful changes. Not just HR saying, yeah, we'll take care of that eventually. We come in and we become part of this team in a way that it's unbiased and that truly helps move the needle in the organizations.
Great, that makes sense. And my experience is that the anonymous survey will actually tell you how engaged employees are right from the very beginning. Because if you don't get the vast majority of employees willing to tell you what's going on and provide feedback, they're not engaged, right? So I think that the typical mark that people look for is at least 80%. That's 8 out of 10 people if you've got a 10-person company, but 80% is a number that you want to be able to be at or above in terms of the number of people that are responding to this anonymous survey.
I always say no answer is an answer. You have to keep that in mind.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.